Hello, so I'm back again to talk about another movie. Hopefully this time most of you have actually seen this one. I'm going to be talking about Spider-Man 3, the one from 2007 with Tobey Maguire. If you watch this movie, your main memory is probably the emo Peter Parker and the bad dancing memes. You most likely did not look back at this movie thinking it was a masterpiece. It was pretty bad. But the movie that ended up being in theaters and watched by millions is not the movie that the director Sam Raimi set out to make. I'll be going through the main production of this movie and how it is the best that we could have done given the circumstances. And hopefully by the end you will understand how film studios can ruin a good and thought out movie and that they should leave the directors alone during production. Before we begin, let's look at the first and second movie. The first Spider-Man, coming out in 2002 with a budget of $139 million, had a box office of $821 million, making it the highest grossing movie at that time. This was also the third superhero movie that was licensed by Marvel, the first being Blade in 1998 and then X-Men in 2000. Spider-Man was then licensed by Columbia Pictures, which is a part of Sony. If you are up to date with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know that Marvel finally got Spider-Man back from Sony in 2017 in order to add him to the universe, but that's a whole other story. Spider-Man helped propel the superhero resurgence in media. It showed studios that there was money in characters of comic books that were previously looked down on by the general public. After the first movie, there was such a success, it was a no-brainer to continue the series. Then, after the second movie came out, it quickly became a cult classic amongst fans. Still to this day, it is referred to as the best superhero film ever made. This gave fans huge expectations for the third movie. Sam Raimi wanted to raise the stakes and make the movie more impactful. Unfortunately, he was forced to raise them in a way that he had not planned for while originally making the first two movies. So now that we have some background for the first two movies, I just want to give you a brief overview of the director, Sam Raimi. He is mostly known for his horror films like Evil Dead and Drag Me to Hell. His style of directing is very much rooted in his horror background, and there are many examples in the Spider-Man movies where he uses them. Overall, the choice to have Raimi direct is one that drastically changed how the movie was made. He likes focusing on the characters and their motivations rather than getting lost in the world of the comic universe. And this is where his intentions differed from the studios. Now let's get into the actual production. Sam Raimi, as I've said, wanted to raise the stakes. He had already mapped out what he wanted the movies to be. He had his villainous Sandman and a subplot conflict between Harry and Peter. If you've already watched this film, you know that both of these are in it. But one thing that Raimi did not plan for is Venom. Most look at the inclusion of Venom as being the start of where this film falls apart. Once it was added, the story that was once clear is now muddy and hard to follow. So why was it added? Avi Arad, who was a former president of Marvel Studios and then later worked at Sony. He decided it was what was best for the fans. Raimi talked about this on an episode of Nerdist podcast. He explained how Venom at the time was the most popular villain/anti-hero in the comics, and Arad was insistent that it was included because he wanted more for the fans. Another thing that Raimi was going to include in the third movie was a setup for Vulture, which would be coming back in the fourth movie. This was ultimately cut in order to create screen time for Venom. Due to the addition of Venom, the character of Peter was also drastically changed. In the first two movies, he's a genuine and kind character that understands his responsibilities. In the third movie, he starts acting egotistically and ruins a lot of relationships that he once held very close to him. So by just adding a character that was not once planned in, it completely changes how Peter's character was portrayed and how he would approach the same conflicts that Raimi had already planned out. Another thing that had to be added if Venom was there was the character of Eddie Brock. Raimi had never had much interest in his character, so the lack of characteristics that he has in the movie is very apparent through the screen. Gwen Stacy was also added, and Raimi has made it very clear over the years that he likes Peter's relationship with Mary Jane a lot more than with Gwen in the comics. So again, it's clear why it wasn't a perfect addition and why it felt so out of place in the story. So this is 3 extra characters already forced into the story that were not initially planned. No wonder it seems so busy and hard to fully get invested in each character's motivation. But the studio did get a lot of money from the toy sales, so that's a plus. Later, after the third movie was released, plans for the fourth movie were already created. There was a script, both Raimi and Tobey Maguire were on board, and they had already started casting. But then Sony gave Raimi a deadline, with the release date being May 2011. In January 2010, Deadline reported, Sony Pictures decided today to reboot the Spider-Man franchise after director Sam Raimi pulled out of Spider-Man 4 because he felt he couldn't make its summer release date and keep the film's creative integrity. This means that Raimi and the cast, including star Tobey Maguire, are out. So with all this, I hope I've shown you enough information to have you think about the third Spider-Man movie differently and at least appreciate what it could have been. Next, I want to provide further evidence as to how film studios can ruin a movie. Another film that was ruined by studio interference was 2015 movie Fantastic Four. If you have seen this movie, I can almost guarantee you didn't walk away from it being fulfilled. There was a lot wrong with it, and the main reason for this was due to disagreements between 20th Century Fox and the director, Josh Trank. Trank shot the film that he planned for, but once Fox saw his version, they immediately forced him to reshoot scenes and change the ending. Trank later tweeted, "A year ago I had a fantastic version of this, and it would have gotten great reviews. You'll probably never see it, but that's just the reality." Another example is Suicide Squad from 2016. Again, I'm sure if you've seen this, it wasn't a positive experience. The studio Warner Brothers had a major impact on the film due to reviews about Batman v Superman bashing the movie and calling it too dark. Warner Brothers forced them to film more comedic scenes and cut out most of the Joker scenes. The abrupt change in tone throughout the movie is very apparent when watching and is the main reason for its failure. There are many more examples throughout film history about studios messing with movies, but I could be here all day. Hopefully I brought light to this issue of film studios meddling with production and ruining a planned out movie that directors wanted to make. Studios are very important to create a film, but sometimes their main goal of making money gets in the way of creativity. I also hope that you can give Spider-Man 3 a little more credit for what it was trying to do. Thank you.